Hey guys, so today we are going to continue adding decimals, but now, yesterday we went to the tens place. We were still working with tenths. Now we're going to take the numbers down, so they're smaller numbers, but we're going to work with hundredths and adding hundredths. And it's the same thing when we, so at the top here, you can see this is where we would add the amount of hundredths we need to make this number, this decimal, the next whole number. And then down here is, again, we're going to be adding and we're going to be carrying. We're going to be rounding and carrying ones and tenths and basically carrying the one over to the next place value. So at the top here, let's start up here. So say we're just going to add the amount of hundredths we need to make this decimal the next whole number. So of course, what do we look at? What numbers do we have? We have 0.40. We have 40 hundredths, or again, remember that 0 doesn't need to be there. It's technically like 4 tenths, but we put the hundredths place there, so let's call it 40 hundredths today. We have 40 hundredths plus what equals just one whole. But we know 100 hundredths is going to equal one whole. So how many more hundredths will we need to get 40 hundredths to 100 hundredths or one whole? Well, it's just kind of like adding. Imagine you're adding to 100. That's the best way I think of it. That's how I think about it in my head. So imagine we're adding to 100. See where I just drew here. And we have 40 hundredths. Imagine we just had 40. 40 plus what is 100? 40 plus 60. 40 plus 60 equals 100. So it's the same thing with hundredths. Right? Instead of working with tens to get to hundreds, working with tenths and hundredths to get to one whole. So how many hundredths will we need to add to 40 hundredths to get to one? Be 60 hundredths or 6 tenths. But today, write them out as hundredths because we're working with hundredths. So 40 hundredths plus 60 hundredths equals 100 hundredths, one whole. And so do the same method for here, because these were kind of rounded numbers, meaning they didn't have any leftover hundredths. But like here, what happens when we get 58 hundredths? 58 hundredths plus what equals one whole. So again, think about it like adding to 100. What plus 50? What plus 58 over here? What would we need to add to 58 to get to 100? It'd be 58 plus, well, what I do in my head is add a 2. So then if I add 2 to 58, that's 60. And then how many more tens would I need to get to 100? If I add the 2, that's 60. And then I need 40 to get to 100. So it's like 42. Or when it's hundredths, 58 hundredths plus 42 hundredths. 58 hundredths plus 42 hundredths equals 100 hundredths or one whole. So that'll be the first part on the work today. Down here. So basically, when we're gonna have to carry, it's gonna happen in two ways. This first example right here, see, we're gonna end up carrying from the hundredths place into the tenths place. And then in the second one here, we're going to have to carry the hundredths place into the tenths place, but we're also going to have to carry from the tenths place into the ones place. So there'll be kind of two steps. But in this first one, it'll just be carrying from the tenths into the hundredths. So what does that look like? It's just exactly the same thing we've been doing, except now we're 2 places over in the decimal. So right now we got 5 hundredths plus 18 hundredths. So, or 5 hundredths plus 1/10 and 8 hundredths. That's saying the same thing. So we're going to add down each place value. So start all the way to the right at the hundredths. 5 hundredths plus 8 hundredths equals 13 hundredths. So you put that 13 hundredths. Those other 10 hundredths became a tenth. Because remember, if you remember, 10 hundredths equals a tenth. We spent a lot of time with that. Ten hundredths equals 1/10. We proved that to be true in a lot of different ways. I'm just gonna X that out though, so it's not distracting. So we add 5 hundredths plus 8 hundredths equals 13 hundredths. That 3 goes there. The other 10 hundredths become 1/10. Now let's add down the tenths. We got 1/10 plus 0 plus another 1/10. That's 2/10. Then make sure we bring the decimal down, and then let's add the ones. 0 plus 0, 0. So 5 hundredths plus 18 hundredths equals 23 hundredths. So now in this one, it'll be more carrying, but this time we'll carry from hundredths into the tenths, but also be carrying from the tenths into the ones. So let's look what that looks like. So 73 hundredths plus 58 hundredths. Start all the way to the right. 3 hundredths plus 8 hundredths equals 9, 10, 11 hundredths. So we got that 1/100th left over. The other 10 hundredths become a tenth. So now we got to add these tenths. So 1/10 plus 7 tenths is 8 tenths. 8 tenths plus 5 tenths is 13 tenths. So we write that 3. We got 3 tenths there. But we had 13 tenths. Those other 10 tenths become a 1/2. Bring the decimal down. And now let's add the ones place. 1 plus 0 plus 0 is 1. So 73 hundredths plus 58 hundredths equals 1 and 31 hundredths. So it's more or less the same thing we've been doing. It might just look a little trickier, look a little more difficult because the numbers are a little longer. But yeah, and if you're really stuck, just again look up here where I made these two in the box. Think of it like adding to 100 because it's the same thing basically. So on the what it's going to look like on your work, I think this is the right one. So what it's going to look like on your work is we'll have this section. I switched around the section, so this section will be first. Add the amount of tenths and hundredths you need to make this decimal the next whole number, and then again we'll be adding on these, and I'll do the example together real quick. So you can see now we got ones, tenths, and hundredths. We have 90 hundredths or 9 tenths plus 12 hundredths. So let's go down the place values all the way to the right to the hundredths. 0 plus 2 equals 2. So that was easy for hundredths. 9 hundredths, this is where we're going to have to carry, so let's watch what happens. 9 hundredths, or 9 tenths, I'm sorry. 9 tenths plus 1/10 equals 10 tenths. So now I don't have any tenths left over. It's 10 tenths, or 1/2. So that's a 0. Bring that 0 down. And those 10 tenths became 1/2. So we carry those 10 tenths over here. They became a 1. Now let's add the ones place. 1 plus 0 plus 0 equals 1. So again, make sure you are writing the carry-in numbers here, the numbers that you're carrying, just so I know that you know the amount you're carrying. That's really the important part here, because I know most of us can add them in our heads. So then our answer, what is it? 1 and 2 hundredths. So 90 hundredths plus 12 hundredths was 1 and 2 hundredths. And yeah, so that'll be it. And there'll just be 4 of these, and then the ones up here. So good luck. If you have any questions, I'll be on Google Classroom. I will talk to you guys soon.